Hi, my name is Jason Bulluck, and I'm a conceptual artist. So the Mahayana Analog Relational Database is a theme in my work, and a pretty consistent source of inspiration, which is discourse. So I'm really interested in the conversations between material histories, whether that's modernism in the West, or traditions of abstraction in the global South or in the East, maybe say post-Buddhist influence. I'm just really interested in the way material histories reflect the contact, right? Even if it's imperfect. This show has been really amazing in that regard. I have this object, I have this Mahayana database, which is taking up these ideas and having a conversation with this Kota reliquary figure in this Philip Johnson house. I mean, it's just a really wonderful moment. And the database, just as an analogy, just works really well for me in sort of helping to shoehorn this exploration of discourse. So the modern relational database, which in some senses is problematic, so we're maybe concerned about things like big data and the surveillance state and that sort of thing. I think it's also possible to consider taking up those energies and those tools that come from database and database theory towards a more benevolent project, right? So it's possible to say, take an example like the museum's database, which is ostensibly this one discrete thing, and recognize it's actually made up of all these really important other object beings, let's say precious artworks and artists and writers and spaces, right? So all those things together interdependently represent this bigger idea. And that's a really neat sort of Buddhist idea that maybe could, encourage us to think creatively about some of our contemporary challenges. So technology and science, part of the discourse, part of the material history, right? So for example, the database or all kinds of bioscience produce ideas and objects that we have to consider. And especially the contemporary artist's work is to help create the conditions for even if it's super symbolic conversation about these changes in the world, right? And so for me, paying attention to being open to the possibilities of technology, positive or negative, and the kinds of provocations that science offer us all. But what I'm thinking about are, again, these maybe canonical cultural contributions to ideas of freedom and liberation, right? So in the North American context, thinking about the post-transatlantic slave trade and the incomplete project of reparation or abolition, right? And all the amazing, brilliant critiques that have emerged over the past many years, but especially the contemporary ones that help us to really deepen our compassion or think about the world around us. Similarly, critical discourse emerging from Western post-Marxist feminist, post-colonial critique, and then this really rich discourse that comes from Buddhism, especially Buddhism's work helping us think about how we teach one another to be in the world and to observe the world. And of course, there's a bunch of recent interests in the West in these kinds of techniques. So for example, mindfulness, right? So this idea that if I'm really present and thinking about something like the identity of a marginalized other, right? I might interrupt my habitual thinking about that person and come to some new, deeper understanding, especially if those discourses are in conversation. So interaction has just been showing up in my work for some years now, and it kind of snuck up on me. But it really represents something that's important to me. It's this idea that I'm largely borrowing from these moments of discourse, right? So conversation, for example, between Western modernism and Buddhism and its material culture, so especially post-Buddhist Japanese architecture, art objects. So think about those in sort of conversation. And this provocation, especially from Buddhism, to look at the world anew in every moment, right? And so anyways, we have this object and it's abstract, and it represents maybe a couple of these traditions of abstraction, but it's not done yet, right? And it can't be done until someone touches it. It's only done for the moment that it moves, right? And then it's on to some other moment and meaning and context, and that I think reflects like some of the possibilities emerging in that conversation. So my role as an educator is definitely affected by that, influenced inspired my artistic practice. At this point, I don't feel or really recognize like a hard edge between making objects or producing ideas or teaching or writing. They just all feel like this big project of engaging this really broad discourse about, you know, our material culture and contemporary moment and all its histories. And yeah, prioritizing my practice has really meant, besides making time for it, of course, and like earmarking some resources, allowing them to take up like a space with integrity in my mind, so that when I'm making things or thinking about things, responding to things, I'm really allowing it to, like, giving it space, you know, in my heart and mind to like affect how I see the world or affect how I've consumed something. Belief is an app, and it actually emerges from this more abstract and material work. It's a little dematerialized. So I'm thinking about, in this app, the nature of sculpture. And a little bit like I feel beholden to Rosalind Krauss and like ideas that sculpture can do. Sculpture and its corollaries can do a few things, right? So they can mark a site, especially this, right? Like, so to consider the landscape and the work an artist might do to interrupt the landscape or get us to consider it anew. And so digital landscape, right? And especially digital landscape in the context of all the things that we're thinking about nowadays, especially post-George Floyd, post-COVID. And yeah, so digital geography, digital landscape, and the role that it plays and how we understand and interact in real landscapes, material landscapes. So Belief is this app that maybe marks the site of digital geography and asks us to consider like abstractions like the rating or the map or the comment, the share, right? And how we might marshal them towards actual generation maybe of safe space. So the app asks folks to think about what it's like to be in a space, to consider their own identities and discourse around those identities, and then use the app to help make meaning in a kind of interactive way, like the way these move. What's next? Yeah, I'm excited to find out. I'm working on new versions of Belief, and I have a sculptural cryptocurrency that's out called New Money, so I'll be working on another, the 2.0 versions of those projects. I'm still working on the Mahayana Analog Database series, and the DNA versions, and I also have a project. I travel around with this large action figure. It's a contemporary taking of Jacob Lawrence's Great Migration series.